welcome to another booktube video from me, Lauren, from Lauren and the Books. I hope you're all doing extremely well. Weather's turned, isn't it? It's a bit cold. I've got a roll neck on and a skirt I'm wearing as a dress these days. That's the type of person I am. Today is another one of those mid-month wrap-ups that I don't normally do. Last month, so smug was I, halfway through the month I'd read 10 books and I was like, I've read loads of books this month. I better do a mid-month wrap-up. But this month I've read 8 books. Today is the 12th that we're filming this, and I've read 8 books already, so I thought I'd do another one of those mid-month wrap-ups. So here we are. The first book that I'm going to talk about is this. Really love this. It's an anthology of short story collection called Outsiders. A lot of different authors in here, some that I already love, some that I had discovered, and edited by Alice Slater. Now, I really liked this. This is all, as the title would suggest, a collection of short stories about outsiders, and mainly women who are on the outside. And I just loved it. Every single story was so evocative that I actually went through and just wrote like a little word at the beginning of each short story that I really loved. What I will say is that once I'd finished reading these stories, I went on and like Googled their past work and found out, and I've like ordered some stuff from the library, and I'm gonna get some books of these authors. Like I said, I knew some of them. It was a real feast, I use the word to describe this, of short stories. And when there is an anthology, I'm always nervous of an anthology because you're like, well, you're not going to love everything in it, you're not going to like everything in it. But this really was high on the positives and high of how much I really enjoyed the stories. Particular stories in here that I enjoyed was a really spooky one about someone looking through a little hole in their, you know, the peephole in their door and seeing a woman stood the other side. That story is called Peephole. Scary stranger at a door. I also liked the one Francine, which was set in a festival. That was very like, it felt very like hippie, but also quite sort of like moody and sensual. Just great. Really great selection of stories. Would definitely recommend. Please go out. Please give it a go. Please give it a go. I'll link all these videos. I will write all the names of the books downstairs in the comments. Get your words right, Lauren. Next one, however, loved that. Didn't love this as much. This was How Much of These Hills Is Gold by C. Pam Zhang. And I read this for my book club online with my pals. Now, I hadn't heard anything about this book, and then when I bought it, I realised that it was longlisted for the Booker Prize this year. Now, this I just think wasn't for me. I don't think the writing style was particularly for me. I don't think the fact that it was a Western is particularly for me. But that being said, there were points of interest in here for me. So this book opens with 2 sisters mourning the loss, the death of their father, and sort of trailing the country, trying to find a place where they can bury him, where he can rest. Now it's very sort of like gutty and gory to start with, and throughout, what I will say is that I found the language, and I use this in my Instagram review, very sparse. Like I found like very short sentences, and sometimes the sentence would be like a word, and that wasn't always for me, and like the sparseness of the language and things like that wasn't for me. However, in each section of this book, all the chapters are called the same name, so like gold, plum, skull, salt, trying to find another word now, no, gold, there's gold again. And they rearranged like wind, and every sort of section they would rearrange those words to make them work in the selection of chapters that was to follow. Now I enjoyed that, so I'm saying, oh, I didn't like the sparseness of the words, the work. I didn't like the fact that not many words were used, but I did enjoy the recycling of the words for the chapters. Another point in here I like is that there's a sort of like gender non-conforming character where it's literally just no big deal. She's just a gender. She just doesn't conform to her gender. I really enjoyed that aspect of it, but the rest of it for me, I just couldn't find anything in here, and I really wanted to like it. But yeah, for me it was a 2-star read, and I didn't love it, but I do know other people that really loved it, so can't be for all the people all the time. Next up is an audiobook, and it is a book that, I mean, I've spoken about this book before on my channel. I absolutely love it, and this was a reread. I hadn't reread it. I'm not even sure I'd reread it since the first time I had originally listened to it, and that's My Name is Leon by Kit DeWall. This book is just, it's just wonderful. It's just so wonderful. Just makes me you know, like when like cool kids say like, I just feel all the feels. This is exactly what this book does. So you're following a young lad, Leon, who is mixed race, and this is set in the 80s, and Leon's mother is unable to look after him and his younger brother. It seems as though it's postnatal depression, but I think there's a lot of sort of dependency issues also going on there. So Leon and his younger brother go into the care system, and Jake, his younger brother, who is white, a white baby, is very quickly adopted, and Leon, who is a mixed race 9-year-old, I think he is not adopted, and goes to live with a foster carer who then he moves in with his foster carer's sister. And you're just dealing with, what I will say about this book is that Kit de Wol does like reading from the point of view of a child so well. Reading from the point of view of a child is not particularly my thing, but this read amazingly. Like, it was just so perfectly done. Listen to the audiobook. It's read by Lenny Henry, who also does an incredible job of accents and just feeling. There's just so much feeling in this book. There's like such happy bits, there's such funny bits, there's such sad bits, there's bits where literally tears are rolling down my face, but there's always hope. It always feels so hopeful, and it is just wonderful. Honestly, it is one of my favourite books ever. I can't believe that when I read, the year that I read this book, I didn't include it in my favourites, because there were other books that were better than that year. So spoiler alert, this will be going in my favourites, because it wasn't in my favourites last time, my best books of the year. But oh my god, honestly, it is just such an amazing book, and I would urge people to go and read it. So yeah, if you want an amazing audiobook as well, this is definitely one to go. Lenny Henry does an amazing job. Next up was Fantastic Mr. Fox by Roald Dahl. David and I last week filmed a video for his channel where it's called Book versus Film. So of an evening, David and I would sit down, I would pick up the book version, David would watch the film version, and then halfway through we'd chat and see what's going on. Yeah, he filmed it, he vlogged it. It's going to be up on his channel shortly. And one of the books and films we did that week was Fantastic Mr. Fox. Now, I finished this in 23 minutes because I started it as David pressed play, and I was like, oh, I'm finished already. Roald Dahl was a staple of mine as a child, and it was very fun to revisit this. Fantastic Mr. Fox I find particularly autumnal. I don't know if it's because the film is very, very autumnal. So after I'd read this, I then continued to watch the film with David because it's not even that long. I think it's like an hour and a half. So for the next hour and 10 minutes, I continued to watch that. It's fun. The illustrations are great. It's sort of moral story, isn't it? Just enjoyed it. I mean, it's Roald Dahl. Surely, if you've never read a Roald Dahl book, let me know down below, because I'm interested in that. Next up is a book I read on my e-reader, and that is One More Croissant for the Road by Felicity, I think it's Cloak. I haven't got it here because it was an e-reader book. It will be here, or here, who knows. And this was a non-fiction book about Felicity's journey all over France to visit particular places in France that have foods from there. So it might be that she was going to Lorraine to eat a quiche Lorraine, or she was going to Madeleine to eat a Madeleine. And on her journey, she's eating lots of croissants and marking them out of 10, and she's doing this whole journey on bike. I really, really enjoyed this book. I found like this year has definitely been for me, and I wonder, although I'm not much of a traveller myself, and like when David and I go on holiday, we go on holiday in the UK, I've been reading quite a lot of travel books this year. Earlier this year I read Around the World in 80 Trains, and another travel book as well. But yeah, so I've been reading like books like this, and I've been really, really enjoying them. What I enjoyed about this was that she had so she'd talk about the leg of her journey that she's on and the food that she'd eaten during that time, etc, etc, and then there'd be something within that chapter called a cafe stop, and it would be, or a cafe pause I think it was called, and it would be go into like greater detail about opening hours in France, or cafe culture, or like drinking culture, or where some like, and it also included recipes. So like food fiction I love anyway, food non-fiction, love that too. Then with a sort of like journey aspect, with like on the train, various friends coming to, on the train, on a bike, although she did get a train sometimes, various friends coming to visit, and then like the food of actually going places and eating it and talking about it. I just really thought it was a great book, and I really enjoyed it. So yeah, would definitely recommend if you're looking for something a bit travel-y. Then I really found it fun. Next up was another one of those book versus films books, and that was Call of the Wild. So this book is Call of the Wild and White Fang, but I just read Call of the Wild out of here. This is a short story about, well, no, it's not a short story, it's a novella about a dog called Buck. David was watching the film at the same time, and I kept looking up because the film looked much cuter and didn't have the racist language in it that this book did. Now, it's all right to keep saying like, oh, it was of its time, but like, it's got to get to the point where I'm like, it might have been of its time, but I still don't want to read about dogs called a particularly offensive racial slur. So that took that away from me. That took away from it, blah blah blah. That took it away from me, that I couldn't like enjoy it. But yeah, like for a short book about a dog, told sort of like from the dog's point of view, or following this dog, it was interesting. And what I will say is that aside from the bloody racial slurs, for a book written in 1900 something or other, can't remember when, but not early 1900s, it was very modern aside from the racial slurs. So I think I ended up giving that 2 stars. And then another book from the book versus films was The Perks of Being a Wallflower by Stephen Chbosky. This is a book that I've read a number of times. I always consider it a Christmas book because there's like quite a sizable chunk set on the like run up to and including Christmas Eve. This time, I didn't get Christmassy feels from it. I think I've previously considered it like a Christmas book, but the aspect, like what I took away from here was just the sort of like heart from it. So this is a book told from the point of view of Charlie, who's just started school and he's very nervous about it, hasn't got any friends, etc. And he's writing letters to someone who he doesn't even know very well, just someone, like anonymous letters he's basically writing to somebody, talking about his school year and things like that. Now, there's quite a lot of like trigger warnings within this book that you don't see coming from the beginning as well. So it really does build up to sort of like this emotional sort of big thing about sexual assault and child abuse and things like that that I definitely didn't see coming from the beginning of the book. Now, David was watching the film at the same time. Coincidentally, David now says that this is one of his favourite films of all time. It's a very good film. It's got Emma Watson in it and Logan Lerman, and is it Ezra Miller?
Yes.
Yeah. Very good film. But yeah, there's a lot in there about mental health and sort of like belonging and friendships and stuff like that. Again, in a similar way to like My Name is Leon, is that there is so much feeling and truth in this book. But it doesn't always feel hopeful in the way that My Name is Leon did. There's some really sort of like dicey times where you're like really worried for Charlie. Yeah, I just think it's a really well done sort of coming of age story. And yeah, I really love it. I think it's a really great book, 5 stars. And then finally, today I finished the audiobook of Homestretch by Graham Norton. Yeah, as I said, I listened to this on Audible. This is the 3rd of Graham Norton's novels. So if you're in the UK, you might be familiar with Graham Norton. He is an Irish chat show host, extremely talented chat show host. Like, I really think he gets amazing results out of his guests. He's also got a radio show, and previous to him bringing out these books, I had read his autobiography, but in the last few years he started bringing out novels, and I've always really enjoyed reading his novels. The first one was called Holding, the second one was called A Keeper, which is still like, it was one of my favourite books of that year, and I think it's an amazing book, really clever, great twist in it, great action. And then Homestretch, which starts with a car accident. It spans quite a long amount of time, but it opens with this car accident in the 80s whereby a few people die, and the young lad who was driving the car, Connor, is found sort of like not guilty of dangerous driving. It was just an accident, basically. He hadn't been drinking at the time or anything like that. And then it sort of goes from there really. Connor moves from the village that he's living in because sort of like just he doesn't want to live with those people anymore, thinking that he's killed people's children from the village with this car accident. There's quite a lot of talk of like what it's like to be gay in Ireland during the 80s and right up to now, when marriage is happening, a marriage between the same sexes is happening in Ireland. Now, what I will say about all of Graham Norton's books is that they're really cozy, and they're really like, this is the perfect time of year to read them, and it feels like nothing's happening the whole time you're reading them. You're like, nothing's happening, nothing's happening, nothing's happening, and then little sort of things just start to plop into place, and you're like, oh, could that have something to do with and oh, and it's just a really like comforting, easy, I don't want to use the word easy, but like just a cozy read, like a really cozy read. Now, I didn't love this as much as I loved A Keeper, but I did enjoy Homestretch more than I enjoyed Holding. That's not to say that Holding is a bad book. I very much enjoyed Holding as well, but this is sort of like second silver medal in Graham Norton's novels, but very, very enjoyable. He narrates the audiobooks himself, does a great job of the accents and things like that. And it just feels wonderful when you're reading or listening to his books. So those are the 8 books that I've read so far this month in October. Onwards we go. Let's see if I can, could I match it? Could I do it again? Because we're not even halfway through the month yet. So there is a good chance that I could do another 8 books this month. Imagine. I set myself such a massive TBR this month. I didn't even end up filming it, because it's just completely out of control. Loads of my library reservations come in. I've got loads of like, because it's Black History Month, loads of books for that just so many books to read. So I will crack on with the rest of my books, and let's see how I get on for the other half of the month. But that's it from me today. Hope you're all well, and I'll see you all again soon for another booktube video. Goodbye.